Good afternoon, everyone. Hello.
Welcome.
Hello, Ludger. Hello, Alex.
Hello, Alex. I hope everything is working now. I saw a crash. Mine crashed as well, so I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, I posted the YouTube version.
If you're on LinkedIn, I saw after I refresh it worked. If you have issues,
hello, Charles Strickland on Substack. That's yeah. So we have 3 platforms for everyone who thinks that LinkedIn is the only one. Although you are not the only system you're watching right now. There are 2 others at least, and yeah, you have the chance to watch it there as well. But we always basically stream to LinkedIn, YouTube, and Substack.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. Hello, everyone. Today is a very special, very spontaneous topic, which was basically I was seeing that this morning again, and the days before again and again, and I'm in the space as well. It's about AI, so it's very surprising topic. I know that we talking about.
We haven't talked about AI in ages, Adrian.
Yeah, I think I don't know, last session and the sessions before. But actually not 3 years ago it was not. Anyway, it's like so AI, there's no dawn of AI anymore. So we are in the midst of AI in use. So the entire industry is in some way or another using AI. So every developer I personally know uses AI, at least on a personal level. But now we were talking about AI in specific often already. So we had this idea of how to improve your TDD workflow, how to improve continuous delivery, how to use AI in general, personal team, leadership. There's so much to discuss when it comes to AI. One fact is that I think the worst things you can do is use AI in isolation as an individual person. That is another thing. And the other thing is have actual resistance against AI in general. So let's say thinking of, I'm skeptic now. So just that I have stoic tech leadership sees that I'm not a skeptic. That's the different thing. So skepticism here is okay as long as you don't become stubborn, because we are talking here about something which changes a lot. That's actually my opinion. So Dennis will talk about that in his opinion. But I am 100% sure that AI is already changing everything, and is definitely changing how we perceive software engineering and app development, SaaS, startups, every of those kind of aspects are transforming right now, which means that just saying that and say that, AI is a hype, I sit that one out, that's no, don't do that. That's practically the worst you can do. And I think that we have so much transformation going on, especially, for example, in startups, that we see that founders returning, or founders who went away from coding get back to coding right now. We see that you see smaller teams suddenly become much more effective because they were good teams with a lot of experienced person, and you see teams who had a lot of juniors doing agency work failed completely to adopt AI because they never had built up a good team thing. But in fact is that in every of those teams AI changes something, sometimes for the much better, sometimes pretty worse. The point is, you shouldn't be, in my opinion, on the resistance side, because it is more a kind of a fact that it reveals if you were already on the good side or not. And now you should work on getting on the good side if you are not there already. And if you're on the good side, improve it. So take a look at what you can do actually with AI. So I'm a big fan of Claude Code. I'm actually a good spender on the Claude Code. And I can say that you can do a lot with that tool, a lot more than you would do without, especially in planning, reviewing, and coding as well. So that's basically all you can do. The big hurdle is, of course, team. So how to translate that into a team instead of an individual is much more complicated than just working you alone on that one. That's for sure. But that should not end in any form of rejection. So that's just. I don't want to be bothered is not the right cause in a professional sense. Now I'm stopped talking. Dennis, what do you think?
I think so. I have two things that immediately jump at me when I hear you talk about this topic. One is I'm much more skeptical about AI usage in coding. I coach engineering teams, and I see engineering practices that I wouldn't want to accelerate with AI usage. So that's my sort of, how would I say, reasonable suspicion that AI usage will slow them down. That doesn't mean that everybody should, but those people who do benefit from AI usage don't need me telling them. So that's also, like, for better or for worse, it is the selection process is quite successful. So as a consultant, my role is more often in, hey guys, maybe you should use AI a little bit less and improve your processes a little bit more, and balance it out. Not stop, not be resistant about it, but just balance. Like the AI usage will not offset bad engineering practices. That's what most people think will happen. That's one thing. The other thing is, I think when I'm seeing engineers, engineering leaders, CEOs, founders, startups, so startup scale up is where I work with most. Startup scale up in Europe and the US, so they can afford cloud, so they can afford the crazy cloud usage. Is these are most organizations that I'm working with, seeing from the inside, they capture ROI for AI spend way too downstream. They try to capture the benefit of it only on the pull request or the code that was generated, rather than everywhere else. I would say, like, the code should be the last thing where you try to capture ROI on AI spend, because we can also look at it from, think of all the artifacts that you create and then throw away, right? Emails, messages, tickets, diagrams, documentation, transcripts of conversations, design specs, iterations of discussions, brainstorming, whiteboard stuff. Think of all of the artifacts that you're creating that don't make it into the code base. Those benefit from AI acceleration, because you can just speed up how quickly you create it, use it, think about it, and throw it away. Right? I often tell engineers, build a spec for yourself, build a test plan, and I usually ask them to commit it so that I can review their process. But the plan is there to be thrown away, right? I just want them to write it down so that they actually think about it. Oftentimes, you create a spec or a diagram just so that you're thinking about it, you structure it. So in the effort of writing it and structuring your thoughts for somebody else, you actually think about the problem, and then you see something that you otherwise wouldn't have found, and then you go work, and then you throw away that spec. But that spec is worth it. And if you can expedite the speed at which you write it and then throw it away faster, that's worth it. That's to me that is the most practical way of using AI, especially if you're debugging a lot in production systems or if you have MCPs. The amount of times that I've seen people look for stuff, just AI can churn and pattern recognize, through logs, bugs, tickets. Is there it? Who broke my this? And you ask Claude, and you have it. Look,
I did that yesterday very effectively.
Something happened. Who broke this? And then you ask Claude to go to the commit history to find the commit that has caused it.
I always send to my colleagues. I always send to my colleagues this picture of this French guy. I said, "Your colleague Claude told me that your code is broken here. Can you please fix it?" So it's not like I'm pushing fixes for others, but I use Claude to find what is the reason, right? And send this to others with the summary of what I think it is, and the AI explained that. Saves much more time than I try to explain the domain of someone else.
Yes.
It's nasty. I don't
or,
need to
or the other way around. If you are explaining it to another human being, record it, and then have the AI summarize the transcript, and then post that transcript somewhere. Right? Like it can work both ways. Nowadays, what I've been doing a lot as well is almost all of my teams have been moved over to project management in Slack, and we just have like a Claude bot or a Linear or a Jira bot listen to Slack, and then the bots just update the tickets. Because we just basically do Slack and PR, so the tickets can be automated, and the acceptance criteria either manifest in the messages or the code and tests. And it's a lot leaner approach to just managing software, so that we're getting closer and closer to this period where with a little bit of AI assistance, we can get to the timeline of our project into the code base.
I can even add to that. So I already told it in the morning to you that we basically don't use tickets anymore.
Yeah.
We have a repository where everyone does have access anyway. So it's like we don't have that product layer above tech, because I hate it. And so we basically work in concepts and in files in a concept folder next to the code base inside the same repository. Everyone basically pushing updates inside those, created and managed by Cloud Code, which everyone is using anyway, with the specific agents, with the specific skills we have designed, so everyone is using it the same way. And you basically can hand over an entire process to the next agent by doing that. So you can, we're talking about resistance today. That is something which really helps teams to work together and not see this as, oh, that's an obstacle. I'm using Cloud Code and this guy is using Gemini, blah, 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 blah. You want to have things which actually help you. So I would overcome the idea that you need to have a personal, very optimized client. You can use it personally anyway for you. But as soon as it comes to development, it absolutely makes sense to use the same infrastructure as a team, the same skills, the unified skills, unified sub-agents, and have a specific file structure which is known to those agents. And they know when I'm, for example, when I need to build on a specific event system or something. We're doing right now event systems for our coach.
And also to have some manifestation of, hey, here's our plan for the next 2 weeks, to have that contextualized in the system alongside the project.
Exactly. Then you have a step-by-step, and then you don't run into this issue that you try to create these miles-long prompts where you cover everything and try to optimize your context window that much, because you basically go step-by-step in this file, and the agent knows that. The agent knows, I don't need to do everything at once. I'm focusing on that step. Let's verify that step. Let's commit that step. And next, let's go to the next step and verify, are we on the right track? Was it good until now? And you can do this. You can even leave your computer because you have pushed it in love trunk-based development. And the next one is just pulling and sees the update and, just feeds the next agent with, let's update. And the agent is doing the update for you and update for itself. So it knows, we are now here. So you bridge a little bit the problem of time. So AIs have problems with time. And suddenly you have a structure of milestones which represent a form of actual, step-by-step approach, which helps you to overcome the issue with time. That's a big, big thing, in my opinion.
Emmanuel has a lot of questions. Maybe let's go through them.
By the way, everyone who's listening to that show, you can ask questions and provide feedback to every time. So it's okay to be not in our opinion. If you have a different opinion, tell it to us. We will discuss it in a constructive way, because we don't believe that we are 100% right all the time, and we want to learn from you as well as you can learn from us. So feel free to toss into the chat.
And most of our evidence is purely experiential, empirical, and very contextualized to what we're going through. Like the white papers are coming out, but the majority of the productivity enabling white papers related to AI will be large scale and in about 3 to 6 months, right? So if you want to be ahead of the curve, experiment and share what you know, even if it disagrees with our experience.
Yeah. So all my evidence of Claude Code is basically credit card based. But anyway, let's go. So let's go through. You want to go?
Well, let's go through Emmanuel's comments because it's starting to grow. I have it in my sidebar. So Emmanuel said, related to the topic of individual versus team, I think there is a real issue. Coding is a social work, and with AI, we came back to the caves. Not me, but many teams. How much documentation have you created and never read or used, or nobody has ever looked at it? This is typical Yagni. Yes, it's cheap doing it, but it is worth it. But is it worth it? What's the ROI of it? So with the individual, yeah. So let's take a break here. First two seem related. Like from the individual versus team-based work. My experience has been that your team either works one way or another. Like it won't be a huge factor in my experience. Either you have been mobbing and you will be continuing mobbing with AI, or you've not been mobbing and you'll just like, if you haven't been mobbing, then if your PRs now got bigger because you were solo and now you're solo but with bigger batches, I wouldn't categorize that as now people are more isolated. If people were isolated, I wouldn't look more isolation as a downward trend. I would categorize more isolation as no change, because really what we should be focusing on is the work collaborative, and if the work is not collaborative, then the nuance of isolation, in my experience, doesn't matter. Like AI doesn't isolate you more. You already were isolated. You just changed what you're doing in the isolation. It's the same thing with regards to documentation. When I'm talking about documentation, I'm primarily focused on storytelling and writing. So as a thinking process. So it is important to write down, to like dump stuff out of your head. And ideally not into code, not into implementation. So the more you can write down your thoughts, or even write like in prose of what you're thinking for your own benefit, and then work out of that is beneficial. I don't call that documentation. I specifically meant a spec or something similar for yourself. It can be documentation if it is useful for somebody to keep up with it, but that usually serves a different purpose.
I can say that our systems are much better documented since we use AI, but not for a human being. So
yeah, we do the same thing.
When I want to have information from documentation, I ask Claude Code about it, and it knows about all the context. So documentation became AI context, and we basically query this context.
That's very good point, Adrian. Very good point.
Yeah,
very good point. Like I don't encourage people to read the docs. I basically, in all of my teams, we've established process where people who are not familiar with the system should be able to ask an AI. So then the AI should explain the system to them with as little hallucinations as possible. And we are then building docs and documentation and rags that are making it easier to explain the system. And oftentimes the system doesn't have to be documented from the code being documented. I think that's a mistake that a lot of organizations make. Sometimes documentation is best by capturing conversation, right? So the best documentation is when somebody has a question on a meeting and somebody explains something. That is often the best documentation about how we did it, why we did it. Like these things that pop up in like little conversations and water cooler moments and collaborative mobbing sessions or pair programming sessions, the thoughts that come up there, those are the really useful documentational bits, not what the implementation is doing, not what the API spec is, not what the external external user-facing API design is telling about the domain. So that's worth automating, like having a microphone in the room all the time, having some kind of AI system transcribe, summarize, capture notes, and just send it into people's inboxes and send it onto Slack, send it onto tickets. And then when you have a question, you can say, hey, look up what everybody was discussing on this topic for the past 3 weeks and give me the most recent update on what architectural changes the team has decided to do. Like that, if I can have that kind of conversation with Cloud, that is already miles beyond any benefit that I could have gotten by asking somebody to document everything in advance for an unknown purpose, for an unknown person, for an unknown time.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of response to what.
Yeah. Emmanuel is like he had his coffee. Also, Eva is on Substack, and we also have Alex on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn. Just trying to keep up with chat because it has outgrown our vertical. It's nice. We have an active audience today. It's good to see.
I try to get everything on the main thread.
Yeah, I can see your copy pasting. That's all good. I'm going through Emmanuel's.
I need to build a bot for this, actually.
Emmanuel says, so saying the other artifacts will benefit from it, maybe not. And the issue is not to create it. Do we really use it, or are we generating documentation so the element reads the documentation and makes us sound like... Yes, so I think you shouldn't build documentation. Like, documentation that you build will probably not be read. So don't optimize for it. Like, don't optimize for human usage. Optimize for a human self-service. Help a human create documentation for themselves when they need it through an LLM's help. That's one thing. For the purpose of finding out about the system. I wouldn't use it for the purpose of teaching other people's agents just yet. Like that's always a little bit wishy-washy. Emmanuel mentioned saying that other artifacts will benefit from it, maybe or maybe not. The issue is not to create it. Do we really use it? I think the issue is creating it, because a lot of people think that it's time-consuming and then they don't create it, and then a lot of context is lost verbally or gets weirdly captured in code. I think the issue is just sitting down and writing it, and you should write that with some kind of LLM tool, LLM system. Tickets as well. Why are we writing tickets if we can have...
The point is, when human write tickets, quality varies a lot, from developer to... Some are so lazy they don't want to write something. Others are like, oh, I don't want to get to the work, so they are lazy because of next text. So sit there and write an entire novel of that.
Tickets in its pure form, stories, right? User stories are meant to capture a conversation. That's what it's meant to be. A captured conversation between somebody who is focusing their brain on engineering and somebody who's focusing their brain on the needs of the customer, the needs of the user of the system, right? That's all we need. The human interaction, as it happened organically, captured in written form for somebody else to read later, or for an LLM to read later and summarize, or index, or at the very least index so we can find it. That would be already a step up from it. So first question. Hey, Emmanuel has a question. Shea, I see your comment as well. We'll get to it. Jose, hello. Very busy today. Alex also linked something, and he linked a YouTube video with a playlist. I'll check that out in a bit, Alex. Take some time to on. Can you copy out of Restream, Adrian? Without no, right?
I can copy off LinkedIn.
Oh, right. Emmanuel's first question. Do you have it on?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. There's a lot. There's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
Uh,
Well, it was a question, but without a question mark, so it's hard to scan it. We need AI for this. So,
yeah, kind of.
very
We
like,
need
what was
AI
the
to keep up
question
with
of
chat.
Emmanuel, the first one? Please write me a comment. Oh.
First question for you: what problem does agentic code assistance solve? I personally don't think it solves any problems.
And the problem is in the question.
Yes,
It is not. The problem is in the question, not in the question that Emmanuel is asking the right question, but he's asking what does agentic code assistance? The problem is we started in our minds with Copilot, so it was a steroid autocompleter which was fuzzy. And
if you're just using it at that level and nowhere else, and are focusing primarily in measuring impact at that level, you're wasting your time.
Yeah, and Cloud Code, for example, is code in its name. It's used primarily 80% of the time, not for
coding. Yes.
It is for analyzing things, asking questions, generating context. Most tokens are going in there. So I think that is an important nuance to the question, actually.
I think agentic coding has more to do with an agent being in my entire pipeline rather than just in, as this sort of synthetic thing between my brain and my keyboard. Like it has to really encompass down your entire workday to really capture the benefit. Because otherwise you're just churning tokens in, tokens out, and you're expecting the generated code to go out faster or be of better quality, and that's not going to happen overnight.
Mm-hmm. But I would like to complete the actual question. So it's not like just saying that's a different or wrong question. It is like I just wanted to point out that code is not the focus of AI.
Yeah.
It's one of the things we're doing, but we always use it in the term of coding. But so in terms of coding, so what does agentic code assistance solve? So, for example, in our teams, when for example backend people changes code, it is like they don't really use AI to make the changes. They only use AI to find where the changes are useful, if they have forgotten anything, if they have maybe created issues which they can't see. This is how they use AI. In the front end area, where you have much more boilerplate, when you want to create something, you always, the most edit lines is always front end. And that is, at least in our projects, we know is always the case. So code generation, code editing, changes of lines of code is much more present in the front-end space than in the back-end space, for example. For example, in database engineering, they are rarely making code changes at all. So, for example, like I never saw someone
mostly analysis.
In ORM layers, they don't do it with Cloud Code at all. They just do it manually because 100% preciseness they needed. These kind of things, no hallucinations allowed. So it is, of course, very, let's say, very contextual, first of all. And I think some have really a bottleneck. Like front end is always more bottleneck of code than back end is, in our opinion. But it depends.
Is that the case in your organization?
Yeah. It's so, because especially
I'm asking because it's the opposite in all three of my teams. I'm just trying to figure out the.
You have more in backend than no.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a specific step.
One of my teams doesn't even have a front end engineer.
Okay, then it's things are different, but it is for our organization like that. So it's a typical Next.js thing. A lot of components, a lot of views, a lot of admin stuff, a lot of client wishes, these kind of things.
Emmanuel is like
go
ahead. it keeps on coming. So Emmanuel did raise a good point of what exactly is our topic of discussion. right? So if not agentic coding for the purpose of writing code, then what exactly is our conversation, is our theme for today addressing? Like what need, what pain, what concern? What I mean is, Emmanuel writes, is generating the code faster the problem? Is interconnecting ecosystems? I'm listening to your conversation, but I can't see from your conversations what is the root problem that this is solving. Shia chimed in and says that things that shorten the feedback loop, and Emmanuel pointed out that AI intrinsically on its own doesn't provide this, and I agree with him. He says, I do not agree with the argument of on a mob using AI. I do pair a mob every day, but when using agents, you make a prompt, wait, check, this flow is the same as a test suite that lasts 10 minutes. Yeah, so I don't use AI like that, agents. Like that is not agentic coding. Like if you wait for the output, then you're still in the loop in the execution, right? I think we talked about this last week. Like that is just Copilot. That is just I'm writing the code. I'm either instructing it to do something and then I'm observing the effects. That is not really. I don't see any benefit in that. I agree. If I was using AI like that, I would also not take a huge benefit from it. So I think implicitly, one way or another, people come in with the assumption that if you're hyper optimized for solo work, that will be your workflow, and I have not seen this workflow to be productive. It breaks my collaborative flow as well, Emmanuel. He just mentioned it a little bit higher up. But I'll get to it. Jose has a response. I'll feel more confident now, especially with the details. The LLM is better at remembering them and connecting the dots. Emmanuel says, one of his last comments, the issue for me is that nobody later ever check or even ask LLMs about the documentation generated. Sad but true. That's the experience I've seen, but I think it's important to mention this. So I don't care as much about the documentation. Like I don't value artifacts where an AI generates text that then a human has to read. I see no value in that, especially when it's meant to be expansionistic. What I'm interested in is when the AI can compress information, when there's too much information for the human to read and can then compress it down. That is useful, especially if the reader can steer what they're interested in. So from a coding perspective, when you're mobbing, when you're pairing, we don't use AIs in coding at all in that loop, because the humans are tightly in the loop. Like we are faster than the AI. Like I always turn it off if I'm mobbing tightly with a clearly well-defined project, because it'll just slow us down. Like waiting for Claude, even if it's like deeply reasoning, we can do it faster. Like and with a very experienced
what
team.
type of actions are you actually doing there? Because if someone is planning an entire feature or making just a change or a bug fix, is a totally different story there.
One example what we might do is while we're coding, we're asking AI to look at some usage patterns and come up with examples. So if you're building a new API, we're looking for examples that were mentioned and are asking it to generate test cases, seemingly organic test cases, just so we can stress test it along the way. Like that is generally what we would be leaning towards, either running in parallel or in a loop somewhere with an agent. Like there's always an AI running in the background, listening to our conversation. Like so, either through video conferencing tools or Granola. And oftentimes, what we will do is, hey, the engineer and I just went down a rabbit hole and we discussed something. Hey, AI, transcribe the last 20 minutes of our conversation and generate the appropriate type signatures. That's how we would use it. The agent will be constantly there, and then when it's time to convert a conversation into some boilerplate, we'd ask it to just pick it up from the live conversation. That's what I mean. Like it doesn't come to the actual implementation side of the code as much unless you're using that for that purpose intentionally. But I would do that solo. I wouldn't do that while on a mob, because obviously I can either have that conversation with multiple AI agents at the same time, or I can talk to a human. Like I can't talk to the human if I'm orchestrating agents, and I can't orchestrate agents if I'm having a conversation. Like those are two distinct processes.
Yeah, but to be honest, mob is not really common. That's more a rare thing.
Yeah, but I do it, right? So I can only
Yeah.
speak from my own experience. Like to me, even though it's rare for like the average person, to me it is, commonplace enough that I have to designate time when I'm mobbing, when I'm pairing,
Yeah, makes sense, but
and when
we shouldn't sound like mobbing is the default out there, which isn't. It would be great if it is, but it
no,
wasn't.
fair.
So
Yeah.
most companies, especially in Germany, I know they are still in an agency mode. So there's one person doing one ticket at a time, and they don't even work with someone else. So pair programming is extremely rare. Mob programming, I think I never saw that other than the typical head of tech was pulling people together to fix a bug, something like that. But not really like, hey, we have a regular mobbing session right now. People want to. Most of the time, what I see in tech companies is that they have this constraint of money, so they see it like a waste of money. That's no weight on my side on that run, but that it is what I see, what I hear of them. So people avoid doing that anyway. So I think people, what I want, why I say this is, I think that people who use Cloud Code or try to implement this try to use the money they spend more on things like Cloud Code in that moment, and try to get the people to not to work together. Right? It's a little bit like, now you have AI, just work in solo with the AI. That's more effective in terms of
Sure.
money.
I mean, that's just a common fallacy with regards to overutilization. Like I wouldn't. That's a separate conversation. For the most part, AI agentic or AI usage in the life cycle of creating a feature or deploying a feature, I find the most value there. I find the most value for an agent to be running to be in the space where organic conversation between people happens. But primarily it should listen. Right? So we are also experimenting with tools like Granola and Whisper, where we just have them running all the time, and every now and then we need an artifact.
Is Whisperflow?
Whisperflow, yeah, I don't. It's spelled so weirdly, and I can never remember which one it is exactly. But it's that attitude of, I don't code with agents in a tight loop often, and solo and deliberately, but that's fine. That's not my primary use case for them.
I think we need to be honest here as well, that there is no one way to do it, and all the others are wrong anyway. So it is contextual. So no matter in which team I go, they take AI and their entire process differently. I don't see many companies who are doing continuous delivery right now. Not to speak that they actually test. So many companies don't test at all. I know they just.
What I've been noticing a lot is that test coverage comes cheap, and that a lot of AI generated tests end up being not very useful, to the degree that it impedes refactoring. Like the implementation specific or overly I hate using any adjective here because we've analyzed this to death, but primarily AIs love creating tests that agree with their implementation, and in my experience it requires a human to separate out two different levels. So if you're using hexagonal architecture, you'd want to think of your application as being implemented within the domain, and as being used by somebody who is outside the domain. So somebody who benefits from the domain being implemented. And usually the tests are in one language and the implementation is in the other. And you would need a human to manage those two different flows of thought. And I find that when you're using Cloud Code as a copilot or as like a back and forth prompting system, it seems to write the tests in the same voice as the implementation, and that implicitly couples them a little bit together in a weird way. Sometimes there's this sort of structural dependency that makes the test not very useful unless you steer them, and if you are steering them, you probably don't use a tight loop for that. And that's also like figuring out what is the correct abstraction for a certain domain concept is what I spend most of my collaborative hours in. Is like, this is how I understand it. Do you understand it the same way? I will try to explain it to you. You try to explain it to me. If we explain it the same way, we probably have a good idea. Or if you're from different teams, like what is important to me, what is important to you? Let's establish some boundaries, and then you have the AI chime in and listen in on those boundaries, and you will have to steer it. Like you won't optimize the humans out of the process. Like that's not the point. The point is to take away chores from the humans, writing boilerplate. Like that is the primary innovative factor here. Is that there's a lot of different boilerplates, shapes of boilerplate, like forms of boilerplate, waste essentially in the process, right? And we're not really optimizing how fast the pull request goes out. We're optimizing if we are creating waste, how much of human effort is being used of creating that waste, and we just waste it. We just save our time by spending tokens, basically, but not on the primary artifact necessarily, on the entire work.
I try to avoid posting every comment double but it somehow doesn't work right now. It was working in the beginning.
Did we break it?
I don't know. I don't know why.
Oh no, I see, because it's restream and then your YouTube account, and yeah, I can see it. It's double posting.
Anyway, so
okay, fair.
Looks like even more.
It's okay, Adrian. You're doing your best. You're doing it. I appreciate you keeping it visible on screen. So Emmanuel did mention that he's pairing mobbing in Berlin, in Germany. Although is Berlin really German? Like you're from the south, right, Adrian? So
we are different in the south.
We are different,
especially in the southwest than in the southeast.
Yes. Yeah. Just as Adrian just said, every company has a different AI process. It reminds you of how every team does Scrum differently. It's like saying that every company does TDD differently. It's possible. Most of us will agree on the loop and the basics. With LLM, it is not like this.
Now we're coming closer to the actual topic of the session. Is that I urged this topic today because I think that we shouldn't go like, AI is not good here, it's not good there. We should be open about that. So just the reason that AI might fail today in that specific area doesn't mean it do so in 2 years from now. So there is basically no company regarding AI not trying to improve it right now. And I think that if you put AI as a topic, every developer wakes up. Some are resistant, some are very open, some are much too open. There's a lot of things going on. And I think that the mature way of handling these things is to don't have resistance and don't go blindly with the hype, but really test it, set up new hypotheses and get your result from that, and then discuss it with others. That it is such a new technology, such an impactful technology. We never saw a single that impactful technology beforehand, not the internet, not mobile. So, mobile was a thing of its own. It was totally separated from the rest of the developer world. And internet came slowly, right? Over decades, and it's very deterministic. And it was just an extension. And AI suddenly turns everything upside down, but somehow not. It is a little bit like, as I agree, it feels like a big beta test for something where even the providers don't really know how it looks like in 2 years. And they're continually working on that one. Like, ChatGPT and other providers tried to revolutionize code like Copilot was. Then Claude Code came out, and suddenly everyone used CLI tools.
I mean, Copilot tools were quite revolutionary. It was good to see that evolution, that space happen. It's just that the way the Copilots interfaced initially was too noisy, and their benefit wasn't really there. Like, I couldn't tell a feature that was built just from observing output and outcomes from the outside that there was or wasn't a Copilot used. Like, if I can't notice from the outside, then it's probably not impactful.
I really like that Emmanuel was pointing out the dictomony of control right here. That is so pleasing right now.
Philosophers in chat.
Yeah.
I also I wanna highlight that previous comment that he mentioned. This one that leads me to conclude that we're beta testers for a technology or tool that nobody knows how to use, and we're all trying to use, but aren't seeing the same results. I categorically disagree with this notion that AI tools have a correct usage. That there is a right way, that there is a default productivity enabling return on investment if you use it correctly. Because, looking back, and Emmanuel, forgive me for singling you out, but I know you're also a TDD coach and a testing coach. Like, we're coming from the same background, and I saw this as well in well-meaning initiatives, well-meaning manifestos, reactive, agile, Scrum, TDD, continuous delivery, continuous integration, extreme programming, all of the waterfall, various, cost of delay. Every time a framework comes along, a methodology comes along, there is this fallacy, very loud, let's say, signal, not noisy, but loud minority sort of voice that, oh, we tried it, it didn't work, and then the reply is, yes, but you didn't use it correctly. Like, you didn't do it by the book, or you didn't do it the way it's meant to be. You just followed the wrong process. It's like, yes, you're not really doing TDD. You're not following the correct process. You're just doing red, green refactor the wrong way, or you're doing TDD in a crude way, or you're doing agile wrong, or you're doing Scrum wrong, or you're doing sprints wrong. And I've heard, and same thing with regards to microservices and monoliths and modular monoliths and blah 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 blah, blah. Objects, purity, like stuff, right? So these conversations will naturally happen in any landscape. I like to be practical about them, and for me, the interesting, practical, productivity enabling view would be AI tools are here now. They're improving. They're quite integrated into the ecosystem, which is good. How can I extract value from them? What are they good for today? What might I consider doing that I otherwise wouldn't? That is already useful. So, for example, I wouldn't waste 4 hours analyzing logs if I'm looking for a needle in a haystack. I would always time box that kind of activity. Or I would expect that to be offset by discipline and rigor so that we have better observability practices. I would expect logs to be in a certain structure, in a certain mix of, it has to be semantically relevant JSON for querying, but also human readable. Now, with the advent of AIs, I might shirk on that requirement and say, well, since we have AIs, we have ML ops in one of our pipelines, I might say, you know what, I'm actually okay relaxing human readability a little bit if that enables us to use Claude to sift through a larger volume of logs faster and find the issue faster. So it can introduce nuance in how I might write logs or how I might structure production observability with regards to debugging production issues. It might create nuance in like how I might want to link up terminology, how I might link up concepts, and ultimately how the teams interface with each other, but not interface with each other in the mobbing. Like that I think is the most invasive one. Like I was on an on-site a few months ago in January. There was almost zero organic AI usage. We were face to face. There was a microphone on the table. Like that was the extent of it. Most of the AI usage happened when we isolated back and went to our desks and did something async. So this
that's what happened often, that AI is pushing people into isolation again. That is what I see actually quite common when people implement AI.
I think there's a I just want to make a notion that a lot of people are playing with AI. They're not really integrating it yet with their primary workflow. And oftentimes there is a lot of curiosity, let's say, of, what would happen if I did this? And that is not so much part of the, let's say, productivity enabling usage. That is more the curiosity and experimentation kicking in, and people just want to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, this is where we have those max things from Claude Code. Like as soon as you have the limited things for your teams, it is an indicator that you use AI just on the sideline. It is not central part. So in my opinion, the central part starts with the API key, where you just you use the tokens you use, and you're not limited to, okay, this developer can't use it anymore and we need to wait 2 hours. That makes no sense.
That makes no sense, yes.
And if someone is posting that on LinkedIn, I just scroll further, because that is not professional usage of AI at all. That's testing out the capabilities, and that's the reason why you're limited. That's it.
Yes.
AI is expensive. So real AI is really expensive. So we're talking not about $20 Juni from JetBrains, and we're not talking about $200 of Claude Code. That is the entry level.
Yeah.
$200 is entry level. 500 to 1K is the average of a fully agentic developer.
Yeah, but and you probably won't get the benefits back on that investment. Like that is, for better or for worse, the cost of doing experimentation right now. Or
I wouldn't say so. Not generally. So it's
no. I'm not saying
on what you are or who you are.
I'm not saying. Sorry, I don't mean to say that it's not useful. Of course, there is always some aspect of this kind of optimization that is and isn't useful. What I'm saying is that it is primarily a convenience made by the operator, made by the human operator.
I know two freelancers who working for pretty good money using Claude Code all day long and basically save 6 hours a day, and the employees don't realize it. It's not great. I'm a virtuous person. I don't like it. I wouldn't do it, but it is effective if you see it that way.
I don't find that anecdote really applicable, right? So to me, this whole I think the argument that what I've said is biased is itself a bias in what I'm saying. I've made it clear that this is my conclusion. It doesn't imply that it's the absolute truth, says Emmanuel.
I need to copy it. Sorry.
Practically speaking, I see teams become bolder when it comes to chores. specifically chores that have to do with reading. To me, that is the biggest, let's say, positive ROI on AI usage.
People actually read.
No, that there is a look. I also hosted speed reading courses of you don't want all information. You just want to read through the text as fast as possible to find where the important information is. So for a lot of humans, we don't really read for the purpose of ingesting the entire corpus of text verbatim. We're scanning with the intent of highlighting higher value and lower value pockets of text visually.
Mm-hmm.
That's what speed reading is, right? And to me, having done speed reading courses 4 or 5 years ago, to me, LLMs are an extension of that. Speed reading and multimodal speed reading, right? So somebody having a conversation and it allows me to read the conversation quickly without listening to it. Or there is a diagram being written live on screen and it allows me to convert the important parts into TypeScript types, but without skipping the listening, reading, reasoning, writing it down, and converting it steps. So there's a definite convenience factor, which is a pure cost. We're paying tokens for convenience. You won't get the token ROI, character by character back. That's not what I mean. I mean is that it is a waste, it is an investment, a luxury, and it is primarily inconvenient to optimize you, like, for example, a good chair or an ergonomic keyboard. You're not going to get an ROI in the sense that the code will happen faster. Your ROI will be higher satisfaction, and then ideally from the satisfaction you produce less annoyance from the person developing the code. It's very indirect. But if I punish you and I say I will give you a crappy chair, a crappy laptop, a crappy setup, chances are that these negative factors will compound and you'll actually be disgruntled and unhappy, and it will negatively impact your productivity, your motivation, your design work, your collaborative efforts, your willingness to collaborate, your willingness to explore, to be bold, to be courageous, right? So the AI tools and the agents in the whole lifecycle pipeline, as far as I can observe and interact with, is primarily coming as behavioral change to real human beings that are where the AI is an enabler when it comes to reading, writing, but writing for the purpose of, again, reading the same way. Like somebody will speed read it with an AI. Of course, it doesn't have to be verbatim long. Or for the purpose of compressing text. So we just had a long conversation and then you're having the AI help you compress it into the correct format. Or to have the AI generate boilerplate, so you get through that tabula rasa moment of, I have an empty editor, where do I start? Right? So it's just overcoming areas of friction, areas like just annoyance, chores, compression tasks.
That's interesting because the topic is overcome resistance to use AI to overcome your resistance. That's interesting.
And also ultimately there is resistance to just writing in general. Writing tickets, writing down conversations, summarizing a conversation to somebody. You just had a retro, now you need to convert the retro to action steps. Who's going to hold who accountable? What are we doing? These things 2 years ago, 3 years ago had to be done manually. And there was always a level of discipline that was necessary to turn a conversation into written text, into some tracking, some measurable system that we're going to use as a tool to hold each other accountable.
Yeah, there were even people employed, typical project managers,
to take notes.
50% of the time.
Notes, yes, and
exactly,
to pass on
taking
tickets.
notes no one was reading.
Yes,
so
and that is like pointless. And that is not necessary. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So primarily from that context, and the same goes to, an engineer's life day to day is not writing code for 24 hours. An engineer will have to understand why a complex legacy system was built the way it was, who changed it, where are the hotspots, which line of code causes the most bugs is a question that I'm always interested in. Like, where in this code base are the nasty bits that I should be careful of? Where is the lowest quality test coverage? These are conversations that you can explore with an AI before you touch the code, and it can be very valuable. This is something I would never have considered even automating, because without an LLM, it requires such a crude usage of static analysis tools that it's probably not worth it, because the analysis alone will be a waste of your time. But nowadays, this is no longer the case. Anything that produces large amounts of data or prose as a result of analysis can also be expedited. Another example that I can provide is it is a lot easier with LLMs to explore systems design concepts or just engineering, computer science literature, because you can talk to an LLM and you can ask it, hey, what white paper or what research paper would be close to this problem space? And it can find from a very large sometimes it will hallucinate, obviously, but you can ask it to back it up with some findings, some real links from archives that were published. And you can then use it to find research papers, which are often 5 to 6 pages, and you can find them and you can read them, and maybe it will actually be useful algorithmically or systems wise to teach you something, the human being. Now, I don't expect the AI to just read it, learn it, and it'll create a system for you that you don't understand. That's La La Land. Like, that's what people wish it was, but that's not the point. But for the purpose of indexing knowledge and reading and making suggestions and summarizing and providing emphasis of, hey, I want to split this file, put markers on the file. Or for example, when I'm doing tidying, I can do tidying in a large file in the sense of I'm picking up cohesion issues in this file. There seems to be this and this. Go through the whole file and mark each function with where it belongs the most based on this criteria. And even in a 2,000 line of code file, Claude will do that in under 5 seconds, which is something that you would not have considered to do boldly as a human prior to these kinds of AI tools. But the usages, I have to emphasize, the usages are opportunistic. Like, it isn't some pattern that you follow. It isn't some strict rule book that you follow and say this is how you code with agents and this is the correct way of using agents. No, it's opportunistic. It's to keep an open mind and say, if I had to do it manually, I will probably not do it because it's a waste of time. But if it would take me 5 minutes and Claude can do it in 10 seconds, maybe I would consider looking at it to see if there's useful information there. It's more about that attitude rather than just being resistant to it.
Let's do comments, because I don't have infinite time today. I don't know where to start. Let's start with another topic. Oh my God, where is it? There, no.
Share.
No, I mean the other guy, the Alex guy there.
Oh, in LinkedIn. Oh man, I wasn't even keeping up with LinkedIn. Okay.
Interesting facet related to AI is expensive. On top of you simultaneously let your team unlearn capabilities it previously had, plus no rookies allowed to show up anymore. I responded to that yes, I think that the junior challenge is actually a real one, because that's actually something. It's not like people get kicked, but it's not like no one is actually hiring a lot anymore because of AI. That actually had an influence on the job market. The hiring is more hesitant than before. I see that often. I really see that often. They say that. I had there was a conversation actually recently on the Cloud Fest where I was with a other team. Anyway, and the idea was that before we hire a junior right now, we spend the money on agents for the seniors and the intermediates, and they were absolutely convinced that this is the right way. I haven't formed my opinion on that, but I can understand why. There is the benefit short term, but it's a hit long term, because people then need to hire seniors which are not created anymore in the future. So we either change entirely. So we basically cannot really be like we were 10 years before in 10 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
That is what doesn't really work in my brain. This is what Alex I think is saying, that with we unlearn capabilities. I add that we actually learn capabilities as well, but they are different than
Mm-hmm.
before. It is not the same way of working anymore. So suddenly there's a lot of documentation, a lot of context, a lot of questions, a lot of things going on, and coding is still, is a thing, but it's the entire process of how to get to what you want to code and how to review it entirely changes. So, and I
Mm-hmm.
see more often the demand that a software engineer shall be more like the architect at the same time, the product manager at the same time, is getting closer to the actual client again, which wasn't the thing before. And these things I see a lot, actually. That is a real change.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was one of the driving factors why I urged for this topic, actually, because I see that it is
Mm-hmm.
actually something. Yes, it is like Alex is pointing out. It's like we should think about that, but it is not like it is not a hallucination. It is happening.
It is happening. Yeah, I think there is merit in the sense that, for better or for worse, there was a lot of menial labor, let's say. So in the software engineering space, there was a lot of pointless menial tasks. And these pointless menial tasks were a good platform upon which to train junior engineers. And those tasks weren't exclusively in the domain of junior engineers. It just happened to be an accidentally, like, richly nurtured area where juniors could grow. Now that thing has disappeared because repetitive, commoditized menial tasks can be done to some degree with LLM tools or a person using LLM tools, right? So like the scaling factor changed slightly, which doesn't mean that we don't need junior engineers, which it just means that the space that was previously rich for training juniors has shrunk slightly.
We had unlearned in the last decade
Also,
anyway to train juniors. Juniors were treated like full engineers instead of people who should learn it. And that was an issue in the last 10 years since COVID. I saw it basically every day, everywhere. So the idea of the apprentice
I
was
agree.
not
I
existing
agree.
anymore.
I think this, we're no longer hiring junior engineers, is more of a result of COVID
The
rather
boot camps
than
as well.
AI. The boot camps, the AI, like people, there being more remote workers in the software space, I think has been a bigger factor in, like, there's just a huge bigger supply of engineers than there is demand, and that means that everybody's cost optimizing for talent.
I
So
watched a
when you're
podcast from the LinkedIn CMO. She said that 50% of the users on LinkedIn are job seeking
Mhm.
right now. Um, and I don't know what that exactly means for software development, but software developments are quite a good space on LinkedIn, actually. And
Yeah,
so it indicates that actually many, many, many software devs are seeking actively for a new employment. We were specifically pointing employment seeking people, so not freelancers open to work. That's not what I mean. And that is interesting to see and terrifying at the same time. So everyone is speaking a lot of demand and the need for more people, actually. So many people say like, we don't need less engineers, we need more engineers, but this is not necessarily what I see. I see that in Germany, most engineers find a job again. It's not an issue. But I see in
yeah.
places like UK, it's not the case. Actually, I think
Hmm.
there's a
I'm not. I'm not that.
demographic
I'm not that
difference.
up to speed with
No.
the. Like, I wouldn't take. I don't know. I wouldn't take that at face value. I was recruiting recently. We had no issue finding staff engineers,
That's the
and we were
point.
not
It's no
looking
issue to
for
find
junior
someone,
engineers.
but it is an issue for
Yeah.
someone to find. So if all mentees I have who are, a little bit afraid of switching, then let's say hesitant to make decisions to switch jobs. It's a little bit like that. So
let me put it differently to connect with what I just talked about with Emmanuel to what you're talking about with regards to job. There isn't any junior engineer in my circles who would be less junior because they're using AI, because they're using cloud code. Maybe they can get something done or can be bolder in some space. For example, if a backend engineer who is not very confident in front end, maybe they can be bolder in exploring front end with Cloud's help in a framework that they don't know, right? But it doesn't make them a better engineer, but they can be bolder, which means that they might.
For what purpose? So if you don't know it, and learn it instead of pretend to know it. Because being bold is more pretending. Like
no, that's. Why are you? What's going on? Like, I'm not saying they're pretending. What I'm saying is that they have a expedited access to vibe code something that they know is bad, with the purpose of producing something that they might use to produce feedback. So something that they will throw away, or something that they will not throw away, or as you said, use as proof of their talents, which they don't have, to convince or woo somebody. That's less. Yes, it can be used for nefarious purposes as well, for fraud or just appearing more capable than not. But primarily, if you're a junior engineer and you're using LLMs, you won't be less junior due to their usage, right? It is, for better or for worse, a leveling factor. Like, everybody has access to these tools, and we are kind of using the same tools. So the factor here isn't so much how much better of an engineer am I because I'm using Claude correctly or not correctly, but rather in what areas are you improving and how are you using these tools to improve in those areas. So, for example, I can give you a concrete example from how I'm working with teams. I have some product people who are data engineers or very good data scientists, but they're not software engineers. Like, you can tell that their code has this quirk. Like, it is more mathy than, like, it's more statistics than software architecture. If you look at their output, like, you can recognize it. Like, they just lack the experience of software engineering. Bolder, they now produce an artifact where previously they wouldn't have. Previously, they would have waited for an engineer to be free, and then they would have collaborated with them. But now they're producing an artifact, and instead of not having anything, they ask, when the engineer is free, they ask them to help them improve what they have built. And I have found, this has been very eye-opening and collaborative, because some people in my circles are using these vibe coded artifacts in limited and controlled environments as conversation starters, as talking points, as prototypes to have a conversation about, like the same way that you would have a spec, but instead of a spec or a diagram, you would just have like a vibe coded prototype of the system. And then we have a conversation about that rather than treating it like as a product increment. To me, that is useful. But now how we stratified the code review process is, I can now say, I don't want to have code review if you're going to feed my code review into Claude. Like, I want to review how you have built the system. If you don't know how to use my code review, then we need to talk about how you're using Cloud Code. And in my code reviews, asynchronous code reviews and pull requests, I have started focusing more on improving how we're using Claude in the process. Not so much how they're learning to be a better engineer. So that they, with my help, work with Claude in a way that creates guardrails to force them to work in smaller steps. So I'm helping them discover things like zombies analysis and TDD and TCR, which normally they wouldn't have the time or even the awareness to read all the 7 related books on to get started. and they can get started in an afternoon. And then they have Claude set up a guardrail that will hold them accountable to not making a too large step, and it will revert the commit if they go off the rails. And that has been very, I don't know, instructional. Like, it has been very productive in the facilitation sense, that I can now use their Claude code to help them build something that will transmit the review, like the learning. Because the purpose of code review is not to fix the code. The purpose of the code review is to teach the author something. Right?
Can you rewind it a little bit? I can't really connect it to the topics we were talking about.
Well, so the purpose,
the junior and this stuff.
The purpose is that we don't have to focus on the author there as if they would have to bear the entire bandwidth, right? So sometimes when I was giving code review, I would have to limit myself to, well, how much time will they have to read it? I need to now triage my code review to optimize for how much time they have reserved to read it and take action on it. So if they produced an artifact that was 2,000 lines long, if I review everything, they won't have time to read everything. They won't have time to fix everything. So they will triage. So I need to triage. So we have this like weird pipelining going on if an engineer who needs help is working in 2 large steps, which is the kind of engineer that will benefit from coaching, from reviews, right? But that is no longer the factor, because they have access to tools that allow them to compress information. So I can give more context in the review than they have the bandwidth to read. And if it gets too much, they can then decide which part of that text to compress. Previously, it would have just been unread or ignored. But this way, at least, they can have a tool that they can decide what part of what I wrote they read and what part of what I wrote they get summarized by the AI. And sometimes it gets just auto-fixed by the AI, and then the AI ignores it, the AI hallucinates. But at least we have a sort of non-binary playing space in this field. And I can see the same thing with software gates in the pipeline when it comes to linters, and I can see with juniors that we don't have to explain everything to them. They will ask questions of Claude. It's like, what does this mean? And sometimes I don't have to explain it to them. I have to tell them, this, what you're dealing with is this and this concept. Here's what I found useful in the past, and have Claude run you down a rabbit hole and teach you a little bit in this space. So it is, you can rather than previously 10 years ago, 5 years ago, we used to teach juniors by giving them books, right? Like, it was like, okay, this is this complicated concept, please read this book, or read this blog post, or read this on Stack Overflow. There was a natural pull towards that, at least for the people who had talent, who were interested in absorbing new information like a sponge, because not all information was available verbatim in the code base, in the review. But now there's a second medium, a software medium, which is, well, you might not have time to sit down and read a book, but because I've read the book, I can help you connect the dots and figure out what this concept is, and then I can steer you in the correct direction. So the AI basically gives you an article, which is a compression of that book. That's what I meant with this. Like, we do a lot of binary playing fields, which were, it needs to be short or it's a waste of my time, has now been expanded. So the playing field has become a little bit richer, at least for juniors, at least for the part where it's a little bit more interesting to juniors. You don't have to get their bandwidth right, which allows for more exploration, more experimentation, the talent, like the spectrum of what a good junior versus a bad junior are. I think that playing field has widened quite a bit.
I think the demand is the problem. It's not necessarily that the junior doesn't have the capabilities to use AI to learn. I believe in that, but having the chance to do that is a different thing. So AI doesn't bring you anything if you are not using it inside a team with real challenges, with real, software development.
But that can be said for any product.
But yeah, if you just do that on your side project with AI, it is not the very same thing, right?
Like, well, what's the point of building a GitHub portfolio?
If no one hires you because they want to have someone who can effectively run AI already, that is the issue right now. It was already before, but it's now with AI a little bit magnified in that case. And but let's move on to the next topic. I think we have discussed juniors now. So Alex had two follow-ups. I need to be a little bit aware of time. I would be interested in your hypothesis, take on this hypothesis. AI strongly incentivizes cutting corners, which, of course, did too many times in the past. And in the future, we will even more likely be cutting corners with those incentive systems in place. Fast code generations, like Kelvin Henry said, 2015, code generation doing the wrong thing faster, not enough time for code review of production. Well, it's a little bit going into the direction what we just discussed, I think.
It's reading it. It seems like the way you have read it and watching your facial expression, Adrian.
I'm thinking about that.
It feels like you think this is a bad thing. That cutting corners inherently means bad. That there's a bias to it.
There is a bias to it, of course. Every statement people do is actually biased. It's very hard to write unbiased. So, but I think my opinion is not important here. But I think that what the market will do is important, right? So there are forces out there, mostly financial forces, right? So we need to keep up a company. We need to earn more money. We need to make a payout for the investors, blah blah blah, and we need to go to market. So this is still the driving force out there. So if people are right now on the train that they think if we spend for Cloud Code and the developers can use it as much as they want, we will become more effective as a company from the business side. So please use it and cut corners wherever you can by using AI. People try to do that. But if the effect is really there or not, I'm skeptical about that, because cutting corners was always, before AI already a thing. People tried to cut corners everywhere where they could. So there were attempts to only hire juniors and sell something as an agency.
But the thing is, you should cut corners, right? You should be able to cut corners, understanding the trade-off of cutting the corner. That's what it means to be good at software engineering, at architecture. There are always trade-offs.
Yeah, trade-offs. Right? So but
the point of cutting corners is like when I use the phrase cutting corners, somebody cut corners here, is we usually use this to say in a derogatory sense that this person has taken trade-offs that they do not understand. Or even worse, this person has taken trade-offs that will have consequences that they are not willing to bear. They understand that somebody else will carry the consequences of their trade-offs. That's a sort of derogatory, sort of negative connotation when we use cutting corners.
This is what I'm referring to. So,
and these decisions are done by
sake of cutting, actually.
And these decisions are made by humans. And even with AI, the human will still make this decision. So again, similar to how the isolation comment at the beginning, I believe from Emmanuel, is that if you were isolated before, more isolation is no change. And if you were cutting corners before, then AI-assisted cutting corners, I would also flag as no change. It's just business as usual. You just change the tool with which you're cutting corners. But cutting corners is sometimes a stupid thing, and sometimes it's a good thing. Like we are in the business of building systems for purpose, right? And the more we understand the constraints, our limitations, or what we don't understand yet, what decision we will have to defer into the future, that is what's important about software engineering. Alex even followed up and said, AI is a tool which can only be used safely by seniors and experts because juniors have not enough mental model in order to criticize its answers. I think that's categorically incorrect. Like, it's the other way around. The seniors and the experts are those people who can and are criticizing the answers. That's the whole point. That's what makes you a senior. It isn't the other way around. It's like, oh, if you can criticize it, then it's going to be an accelerator. And if you don't criticize it, it's not going to be an accelerator. I can also phrase it as the junior engineers are those who just copy stuff from Stack Overflow and they don't know how to code, and they're just using some weirdly wired together jQuery stuff from 2009. And that's not the point. The point is that the best software engineers have always been the people who can criticize, who can take critique, who can ask for review, who aren't ego attached to their work, who aren't attached to hogging a ticket, who are, as Emmanuel mentioned, collaborative in their work, who are not afraid to design together, test together, code together, pair together, that there isn't this mine or yours mentality to code. It's just an artifact that's being passed around in a business ecosystem, and we have our part to play. So the best people are always those who can navigate this entire space without shortcomings, without ego attachment, without, I don't know, aggrandizement for, oh, I have this huge, I have this very smart Claude prompt and I'm keeping it to myself and I'm not going to share it with my team because it makes me appear very smart.
But that's toxic already. That's
toxic. But toxic people exist, and there are toxic people who, with AI tools, will continue to be toxic, right? Like, I just don't like this idea of, if we have an incompetent engineer, then the expectation is that with AI, they should become more competent now. That is categorically just a sort of wishful thinking with regards to, hey, I wish this wasn't a problem in 2026, rather than treating the question as, okay, if I have a junior engineer, should I give them a Cloud Code license? Like, what's the benefit of me not giving them a Cloud Code license, right? Like, that's the conversation that you need to have. Not how will they be productive or how to best teach them how to use it, but what's the benefit of me not giving them one? The same way as, if I have a junior engineer and a senior engineer, should I give the senior engineer the more expensive laptop? Well, I don't know. What are they doing? What kind of workflows are they running? Is their work demanding that they have a more powerful laptop? If yes, give them a more powerful laptop. Can you afford to give everybody the most powerful laptop? Yes, then do that. Right? Like, that is the category space in which these decisions need to be made objectively, not in the, oh, we can hire juniors now because juniors with AI will be, much cheaper to vibe code stuff than hiring a staff engineer. Or the other way around. A staff engineer with AI assistance is much better than 5 juniors without. Like, that's just angst created by people who are wanting to sell AI products by creating fear about AI taking your jobs. And for the most part, it's probably just economical background plus a little bit of fallout from COVID still, and there is a lot of fear especially on social media, especially on LinkedIn, with regards to this topic about it's replacing people. But ultimately,
not anymore. I think it's
less. Yeah,
people understood it right now that we are still all existing.
Yes. Yes, and for the most part, there is menial tasks that can just be optimized, or people can just do it themselves in a way that is practical. I also notice it now, like how I do research. I do research primarily with AI tools, not so much with search indexes anymore. Like, think of it. The category of, I don't need a blog post to tell me how to do X, because that blog post existed in the past, and now an AI has filtered that, and now I don't need the search engine to help me find the blog post, and that blog post doesn't need ads to keep it online so that I can find it 5 years later so that it can continue paying for its hosting costs. That AI can now snapshot that information, and I can have the AI proxy that information through it having been what's the process? It's having been trained on that book, or
that will be a different thing in the future, because we have less and less handwritten articles, which are novelties.
Yes, that might happen.
So
That
we
might
have
happen.
now the trained staff of AI is creating the new articles because people are getting lazy, and it's trained on the.
But for the most part, it's rather than being handwritten, it's being AI written. So even though there was a human in the process, it is written in a different voice, and that will have an impact on like the pop culture of our generation. But I don't think it'll be generation defining.
I need to get to an end from my side. You can stay if you like, but I need to go.
No, I do also need to.
So that was a great conversation.
dinner.
Maybe we haven't tackled every of the questions, but normally when we promise to tackle all the questions, we get 3 and not 30. And so I think we did well.
It was nice.
Right?
And I accidentally closed Substack. I just noticed.
Starting from next week, we should have a page where you can see what the next topics are and how you can actually join them, which is because in the beginning there was a lot of issues with LinkedIn streaming crashing, then Substack was freezing, the typical thing. And you have then an overview page where you can see all the kind of things and where you can find the recordings and maybe some clips or something like that. More information about the stuff we're talking about.
Was there any comments from Substack? I lost the chat log on Substack. Could you check?
What?
Are we up to date on like the Substack comments that you were copying over? If you still have it open.
Yeah. No, there were one coming in from Shea right now. That one.
I'll be there next week anyway. Yeah. So what I've been noticing with regards to AI usage is that the AI vendors are systematically increasing prices, token prices, monthly subscription prices, and for better or for worse, that will serve as a forcing function for people to get serious about either finding a way that justifies their spend or to just stop spending it and use it.
There's this new algorithm now implemented by Google, and OpenAI is doing that as well, and they plan to up to 6 times smaller token spaces, less RAM they need to use, and probably the cost for inference could go down as well, hopefully. That would be great. So they use now 6 times less digits, also space. I don't know exactly. I just heard that. So
good, because buying RAM has been a nightmare lately. So
if
they can get the prices back down,
that's not fun at all, right? Yeah. And okay, cool. So we will announce a lot of new streams next week. Because
are you and I meeting on Friday? Is that going to be streamed?
I don't know.
Or private? My understanding was that you and I are meeting private on Friday to plan it.
Yeah, we're meeting, but I wasn't thinking of streaming.
I just wasn't clear. Fair enough.
Yeah, maybe you can. I don't know, but it's not that interesting to plan that.
Yeah. The planning sessions are not super interesting.
The working session. Say, do you want to see how we work with tickets? It's so awesome. No, it's actually not a ticket anymore. So that's cool. Anyway. Thanks for listening. That was a great response today to everyone.
Yeah.
Interestingly, not that much response from YouTube today, but from the platforms where we actually had the issues. That's interesting. Was a good one.